I'm Tiger La Flor. I started out in music when I was pretty young. I started out by playing in actually a all-girl grunge rock band with my sister and cousin in Seattle, Washington, which is where I grew up. So about as Seattle as you can get. My early love was always for like Seattle grunge, Nirvana, Hole, all of that. I was in that band for a long time. We were doing like the show circuits, playing every weekend and gigging and put out some records. I was 15 when I dropped my first record, and that experience for me really like instilled this love of music that I carried with me throughout the rest of my time doing music. And that project has evolved in so many ways. Currently, now it's my solo project, Tiger La Flor. But I'd say that nostalgia for the past that was in that early rock music and that desire to really make waves in genres too where like Asian artists aren't represented has been something that's been consistent with my projects over the years. And the current form is Tiger La Flor, which is my solo project. I still play with my sister and cousin, but it's not like a band vibe. It's a lot less rock and roll, but I describe the current project as like cinematic, nostalgic indie pop. Being in a band with your family is so much fun. It's nice because you all know each other so well, so you can be so honest when things just don't sound right. You just are like, cut the track, who's off, what's happening, like this sounds bad. You can just be so honest, but it's also super fun. I think we all, my sister and cousin and me, all always loved fashion too. So it was so fun. We would have like coordinated dance moves. We'd coordinate our outfits for every show, which is like still, I think creative direction is like such a part of my project now, and it's fun because I have just a group chat with my sister and cousin, and whenever there's anything like stylings or music videos, we're all just texting back and forth about like the creative vision. So it's been fun having like they're basically like two sisters to me, but technically like a sister and a cousin who just also love like fashion, music, and all the same like musical inspirations as you. Growing up in Seattle, we had like no people in the, at least that I knew, who were doing more of like a mainstream kind of lane. There were a lot of people who had done music in the 90s that we knew, but obviously the music scene had changed so much over time from then to today. So it was definitely a learning curve. I'd say when we were doing that project when we were young, it was just basically our like marketing was just playing tons of shows. Like every weekend we were just playing hundreds of shows, but we really didn't know anything about like social media or like any of that kind of stuff to get your music out beyond your like immediate hometown and the places that you could play gigs in Seattle. So I think getting older and kind of watching other artists, learning about marketing. I like went to school, I studied that, and then being able to apply all of those learnings to the current project was a gigantic learning. But I'd say the biggest kind of like emotional learning was just not to give up on whatever you're working on. I think Teenage Tiger would be so excited about where I am now with the solo era. It's really come alive in so many ways, and so many of like these like dream board kind of moments that I've had when I was growing up have come true. So it's been just kind of surreal watching it all unfold. So I wrote Motel 6 after a road trip that I took from Seattle to LA. And one of the evenings I actually slept at a Motel 6. So that's where the Motel 6 comes out. Actually, probably multiple evenings I slept in a Motel 6, but one when I actually stayed in one in San Rafael, which is kind of the opening lines of that song. And the song was really inspired by that feeling of I had throughout that entire road trip where you're physically moving on, like you're physically driving away from this relationship, but emotionally you're still not entirely moved on. So there's lines in that song like, I hope you find me in the wind blowing behind me, which kind of show that juxtaposition of physically moving on from something when you're not 100% emotionally moved on with it. Mm-hmm. But also just kind of the healing I think that comes when you're in nature, like on that highway. It's such a beautiful drive, and also with time it's just like a slow kind of healing, but it definitely still has that feeling of yearning, where it's not like a empowerment song of like, screw you, I'm totally over it. It's very much that I'm still in love with you, but I know that I need to leave and move on. What made me want Motel 6 to come out next was when I made that song, it just captured this kind of that feeling of like road trip driving that so reminds me of my childhood. My dad's from Spokane, Washington, and my mom's from Walla Walla, Washington, which are both to get there from Seattle, you cross this giant desert, the Eastern Washington Desert. That's just this kind of barren land. And that's honestly where I really fell in love with music because my dad would always play old records, especially old 70s records.
Mhm.
Like he loved Neil Young and playing the Beach Boys and Fleetwood Mac, Mamas and Papas. So I really fell in love with that era of music during those drives. And when I heard Motel 6, it evoked that because sonically it feels very 70s Fleetwood Mac. And it also has that like Americana imagery of that road trip. And it struck for me just this kind of vision of making a record really inspired by that era of music, like the 60s and the 70s. Um, and also just the imagery visually of the Pacific Northwest where I grew up,
Mhm.
that desert land in the Eastern Washington Desert, but also the coastal world that I now live in, being in Los Angeles, of being here in Southern California. So it felt like a great kind of launching point for that project. I think my favorite lyric in the song is I hope you find me in the wind blowing behind me because it it has that juxtaposition in it that like the wind is blowing behind me. I'm like moving on and leaving, but I still hope you find me in that. I don't want you to totally forget about me. Maybe
Yeah.
that's toxic, but it kind of summarizes the I think that feeling that a lot of people have when a relationship ends. If you're not completely over it and you want and yeah, you're just kind of stuck in that in between of knowing you need to move on, but still having so much love for this person. We already shot some visualizer content for Motel 6. I'm in the process of seeing if I can get a hold of a Super 8 camera to go shoot some B-roll, like actually on that drive. Since am actually driving up to San Francisco soon.
Okay.
But yeah, regardless of if the music video comes out, there's always sync potential if anyone has a scene like that they want to throw it into. I would love for it to build up into a larger project, which full disclosure, I haven't gone complete sign off from our A&R team on this, but I'm working on them today, so we'll see if we can make it happen. There's so much that could happen, at least in my head, in that world of you really don't hear that many songs right now that have that feeling of like 50s, 60s, 70s. And I think to write about a place really authentically, it helps if you've actually lived it. And it's like how many people have lived that drive of the Eastern Washington Desert and that inspiration. So for me, it's like so personal to me. So I'm really excited about hopefully doing a whole project around that. So I'm Japanese and Korean,
Mhm.
and just growing up, Japanese and Korean really inspired me in music. It just gave me this drive because there was nobody like me, especially when I was growing up doing music when I was like in middle school,
Mhm.
that was really making it in music. I know when I was in college, like BTS started kind of blowing up and like that was the first time that I was seeing like someone Asian like hitting the Billboard charts, but like growing up especially especially with the music I loved, which was like rock and roll 70s, all of that, there was like zero representation. So I think that's mainly been a driving factor that influences me just as an artist. It's definitely motivational to just keep going. I love Americana music, and it also is, I'm really passionate about the fact that to me Americana music really represents the essence of like what it means to be American. So if you don't have representation of certain like racial groups in Americana and country music, it feels like they're missing from that entire narrative. And so I think for me, like I love the music, and also it's kind of a mission of mine to really want to represent in that genre and explore that, especially since people told me I don't know if this makes sense for you. And whenever anyone tells me I don't think this makes sense for you, it just like really lights that fire for me where I'm like, I'm gonna do it then. Let's see how this works. My celeb secret is that I grew up playing basketball, which I never talk about, but I had like a little basketball court that my dad built in our house since he is a huge basketball fan, and that was my other passion growing up, which I never talk about or showcase. My shot's still pretty decent, but I was definitely way too short to make moves in the basketball space.